The massive ship hung in Earth's orbit like a dark cloud, its metallic surface reflecting the pale blue glow of the planet below. Inside, High Commander Vera stood at the observation deck, her tall frame casting a long shadow across the polished floor. Her people, the Zentari, had traveled across countless star systems searching for worthy opponents. As a society of warrior women who valued strength above all else, they had conquered dozens of civilizations, but Earth was different. Vera's golden eyes narrowed as she studied the readings on the holographic display before her. The humans' military capability was surprisingly limited compared to their technological advancement. It didn't make sense to her. A species capable of splitting atoms and exploring their own solar system should have developed more weapons of mass destruction by now. High Commander, First Officer Kyla approached, her ceremonial armor gleaming under the ship's lights. The reconnaissance team has returned from their surface observation mission. You'll want to hear their report firsthand. Vera turned, her long silver braids swaying with the movement. Proceed. The reconnaissance team's leader, Scout Captain Naira, stepped forward. She was younger than most in her position, but her combat record was impeccable. High Commander, what we've discovered about the humans is unusual. They possess the ability to wage war on a massive scale, yet they actively choose not to. Their strongest nations maintain peace through something they call diplomatic relations. Vera's expression hardened. Explain. They have organizations dedicated to preventing war. Their leaders meet regularly to discuss peaceful solutions to conflicts. Even more striking, their warriors, they call them soldiers, often serve as peacekeepers and aid workers during natural disasters. The concept was so foreign to Vera that she almost dismissed it as a misunderstanding. In Zentari culture, showing mercy was seen as weakness. Their history was written in the blood of countless battles, each victory bringing greater glory to their people. There's more, Naira continued, pulling up footage on the main screen. We observed their entertainment media. They create stories about war, but many focus on its tragic nature rather than celebrating victory. They have monuments dedicated not to conquest, but to peace and remembrance. The images flickered across the screen. Children playing in parks, families gathering for meals, people of different cultures working together in massive cities. It was so different from the military training grounds and combat arenas that dominated Zentari worlds. Most peculiar, First Officer Kyla commented, they seem to value individual life over collective glory. Their medical facilities treat everyone, even their enemies in times of conflict. Vera walked closer to the screen, studying the faces of the humans going about their daily lives. Have they grown weak from peace? Perhaps they've forgotten how to fight. No, High Commander, Naira replied firmly. We analyzed their historical records. When threatened, humans fight with remarkable tenacity. But they've learned something our people never considered. They've learned that there are victories greater than those won through combat. The statement hung in the air like a challenge to everything the Zentari believed. Vera had led countless conquest campaigns, but she had never encountered a species that could be both powerful and peaceful by choice. There's something else you should see, Naira added, bringing up new footage. They're young ones, they dedicate enormous resources to education and care. Not just combat training, but knowledge of sciences, arts, and something they call emotional intelligence. The images showed schools filled with children learning, laughing, creating. It was vastly different from the strict military upbringing of Zentari youth, who learned to wield weapons before they could write. Vera found herself drawn to a particular scene, a human teacher comforting a crying child, showing patience and kindness instead of the harsh discipline a Zentari instructor would have imposed. Their strength, Kyla observed thoughtfully, seems to lie in their ability to choose when not to use it. The concept was revolutionary, and potentially dangerous to the Zentari way of life. If word spread that a species could be both strong and peaceful, it might challenge the very foundations of their warrior society. What are your orders, High Commander? Kyla asked, her hand resting on her weapon out of habit. Vera remained silent for a long moment, her mind wrestling with implications that went far beyond a simple conquest mission. The humans' reluctance for war wasn't born of weakness, but of a different kind of strength, one that her people had never considered valuable. "Continue observation," she finally commanded. "But maintain our cloak. I want to understand more about these humans and their alternative path to power." As her officers departed, Vera remained at the observation window, watching Earth rotate slowly below. For the first time in her long military career, she found herself questioning whether victory through combat was the only way to prove strength. On the planet below, oblivious to the scrutiny of the Zentari warriors, humanity continued its daily struggle to choose peace over conflict, to build rather than destroy, to love rather than hate. It was this very choice, this daily victory over their own capacity for violence, that made them uniquely powerful in ways the Zentari were only beginning to comprehend. The first seeds of doubt had been planted in Vera's mind, and with them, the possibility that her people's understanding of strength and glory might be fundamentally incomplete. As Earth's lights twinkled below like countless stars, she realized that this mission might end very differently from any she had led before. In the depths of their cloaked starship, High Commander Vera made an unprecedented decision. For the first time in Zentari history, she authorized a small infiltration team to live among humans, not as warriors preparing for conquest, but as observers seeking understanding. The chosen team, led by Scout Captain Naira, underwent extensive physical modifications to appear human, though they maintained their impressive height. The team established themselves in a bustling coastal city, where the constant flow of diverse people would make their slight oddities less noticeable. Their base of operations, a small bookstore, chosen specifically because it would allow them to study human culture through literature and daily interactions. Naira, now going by the cover of a bookstore owner, found herself increasingly fascinated by the complexity of human social structures. One rainy afternoon, she witnessed something that challenged everything she knew about strength and power. A group of teenagers had gathered outside her store, surrounding a smaller boy. In Zentari culture, this would have been the prelude to a combat challenge, a chance for the weak to be culled. But what happened next defied her expectations. Another teenager, a girl with wild curly hair, stepped between the group and their target. She carried no weapons, wore no armor, yet her voice rang with authority. "Back off," she said, not with the threat of violence, but with something else, moral conviction. More surprisingly, 2 other students joined her, forming a protective circle around the boy. The would-be aggressors disbanded, not from fear of superior force, but from the power of social disapproval. Naira watched, amazed, as the defenders then invited the boy to join them at a nearby cafe, transforming a potential battlefield into a scene of friendship. Through their encrypted communication channels, Naira shared her observations with High Commander Vera. "These humans have developed weapons more powerful than our plasma cannons. They call them words, empathy, and social unity." Meanwhile, another team member, Kira, had taken a position as a volunteer at a local community center. She watched in fascination as humans devoted their free time, a concept foreign to the Zentari, to helping complete strangers. They taught languages to refugees, distributed food to the hungry, and provided comfort to the elderly. One day, Kira found herself assisting during a natural disaster response. A severe storm had flooded parts of the city, and humans from all walks of life came together to help those affected. She observed business rivals filling sandbags side by side, people opening their homes to strangers, and children organizing donation drives for displaced families. In her report to Vera, Kira wrote, "Their response to crisis is unlike anything in our military doctrine. They don't seek to exploit weakness, they actively work to eliminate it. Their society grows stronger by lifting up their weakest members, not by culling them." Back on the ship, Vera struggled with these reports. The more she learned about humanity, the more she questioned the Zentari path. Their latest surveillance revealed something even more perplexing. humans were capable of learning from their mistakes on a societal level. Through their monitoring of human communications, they discovered how humans documented their wars not as glorious triumphs, but as cautionary tales. They taught their children about past conflicts to prevent their repetition, not to inspire future conquest. This concept of learning from failure rather than being destroyed by it was revolutionary to the Zentari mindset. The infiltration team's cultural specialist, Lyra, had taken a position at a university library. She spent countless hours studying human history, particularly the moments when humanity chose peace over war. She discovered that humans had developed something the Zentari had never considered, the ability to see strength in admitting mistakes and changing course. Lyra's research uncovered numerous instances where human nations, once bitter enemies, had become allies through diplomacy and shared interests. The concept of transforming an enemy into a friend without combat was entirely alien to Zentari thinking, yet humans had done it repeatedly throughout their history. One evening, as Naira was closing her bookstore, an elderly human entered. Despite the closed sign, something about his demeanor made her pause. He moved slowly, aided by a walking stick, yet carried himself with quiet dignity. He explained he was a veteran, a warrior who had seen the worst of human conflict. Instead of boasting about his victories or displaying battle scars as a Zentari would, he spoke of loss, reconciliation, and the importance of preventing future wars. He shared stories of former enemies becoming friends, of learning to see humanity in those he once called foes. The real victory, he told her, unaware of her true identity, isn't in defeating your enemy, but in turning them into a friend. That night, Naira sent her most important report yet to High Commander Vera. The humans' reluctance for war isn't a sign of weakness, it's evidence of a strength we never knew existed. They fight their own violent instincts daily and usually win. Their greatest battles aren't fought with weapons, but with wisdom, restraint, and something they call compassion. As Vera read these reports in her command chamber, she realized that the Zentari's intended conquest of Earth might instead become their greatest lesson. The humans' peaceful strength was not just an alternative to the Zentari way, it might be an evolution of it. The question now was, how would the proud Zentari warriors react when they learned that the most powerful weapon in the universe might be the choice not to use one at all? The situation aboard the Zentari ship grew increasingly complex as more reports flooded in from the surface team. High Commander Vera found herself facing an unprecedented crisis, not of warfare, but of ideology. A growing number of her warriors had begun questioning their society's fundamental beliefs after studying human behavior. The breaking point came during what humans called International Peace Day. The infiltration team witnessed global celebrations, but it was a small incident in a city park that truly shook their understanding of power. Naira watched as a group of children from different backgrounds participated in what humans called a peace march. They carried handmade signs with messages about friendship and unity, their small voices rising in songs about harmony. But what caught her attention was a scene unfolding at the edge of the gathering. A small boy had tripped and dropped his sign. In Zentari culture, such weakness would have meant immediate shame. Instead, something remarkable happened. Other children rushed to help, not to take advantage of his vulnerability, but to assist him. They helped him up, dusted off his clothes, and worked together to fix his damaged sign. The boy's tears turned to laughter as what could have been a moment of humiliation became a demonstration of community strength. Meanwhile, aboard the ship, First Officer Kyla was dealing with an unprecedented situation. Several younger warriors had approached her privately, expressing doubts about their upcoming role in the potential invasion. They had been monitoring human entertainment networks, particularly something called documentary films, which showed the devastating impact of warfare on all sides of a conflict. High Commander, Kyla reported to Vera in their private chambers, "Our warriors are asking questions we've never faced before. They've discovered human concepts like mutual assured destruction and peace through strength. Some are suggesting that our understanding of power might be incomplete. Vera stood at her viewing window, watching Earth's oceans swirl with clouds and color. Tell me more about these doubts. They're studying human military history, particularly something called the Cold War. Two powerful nations, armed with weapons that could destroy their entire world, chose not to use them. Our warriors can't comprehend this level of restraint, or why it might be considered strength rather than weakness. The situation grew more complicated when Lyra, their cultural specialist, discovered something remarkable in her university research position. Humans had developed entire fields of study dedicated to understanding and preventing conflict. They called them peace studies and conflict resolution. The concept of studying peace with the same intensity that Zentari studied war was revolutionary. One day, Lyra attended a lecture that changed everything. The speaker was a former child soldier who had transformed his life to become a peace advocate. He spoke about breaking cycles of violence, about choosing a different path despite knowing nothing else. His words resonated deeply with the Zentari observers, who had never considered that their warrior path might be a cycle that could, or should, be broken. Back in her bookstore, Naira experienced another perspective-altering event. A group of students had organized a reading club, and their chosen book was about humanity's journey from warring tribes to cooperative societies. During their discussions, Naira learned about something humans called cultural evolution, the idea that societies could grow and change their fundamental nature over time. We're not just what our ancestors were, one student said passionately during a discussion. Every generation has the choice to be better, to learn from the past without being chained to it. These words struck Naira like a physical blow. The Zentari had always prided themselves on maintaining their warrior traditions unchanged for millennia. But what if that wasn't something to be proud of? What if their static nature was actually a form of stagnation? The infiltration team's reports began to show a pattern that disturbed the Zentari High Command. Humans' greatest achievements hadn't come through conquest, but through cooperation. Their most significant victories weren't won on battlefields, but in laboratories, classrooms, and diplomatic chambers. One of the most shocking discoveries came from Kira's work at the community center. She had been observing human conflict resolution on a small scale, watching mediators help people work through disagreements without violence. The process seemed almost magical to her, enemies walking into a room and leaving as partners, all through the power of dialogue and understanding. They have mastered a form of combat we never imagined, Kira reported. They fight with ideas, empathy, and understanding. And their victories last longer than any won by the sword. High Commander Vera found herself facing a decision that would reshape Zentari society forever. The evidence was becoming overwhelming. Humans' reluctance for war wasn't a weakness to be exploited, but a strength to be studied and perhaps emulated. In her private logs, Vera wrote words that would have been treason in earlier times: "We came to this planet seeking worthy opponents to conquer. Instead, we may have found worthy teachers to learn from." The humans' greatest weapon isn't in their arsenals, it's in their ability to choose peace even when they have the power to wage war. As Earth's sun set on another day, casting a golden glow across the ocean, Vera made a decision that would echo through Zentari history. She called a meeting of her highest-ranking officers, knowing that what she was about to propose would either begin a new chapter in their civilization story or end her career in disgrace. The question was no longer whether to invade Earth. The question was whether the mighty Zentari warrior culture was strong enough to learn from those they had come to conquer. The command chamber of the Zentari ship hummed with tension as High Commander Vera faced her assembled officers. The massive holographic display showed Earth rotating slowly, its blue-green surface deceptively peaceful. But it wasn't the planet that concerned them now, it was the revolutionary proposal their commander had just presented. "You suggest we learn from them?" Combat Master Zara's voice carried both disbelief and a hint of curiosity. Her battle-scarred armor, bearing the marks of 100 victories, seemed suddenly heavy on her shoulders. "Not just learn," Vera replied, her voice steady despite the gravity of the moment. "I propose we evolve. She gestured to the display, which shifted to show scenes from Earth's surface. Our infiltration teams have discovered something we never considered possible, a civilization that grows stronger by choosing peace over war. The images changed rapidly. International space stations where former enemy nations worked together, humanitarian aid workers crossing battle lines to help those in need, peace treaties being signed where weapons were once raised. But it was the next series of images that truly captured the officer's attention. This, Vera explained, is what humans call preventive diplomacy. The display showed delegations from different nations meeting, talking, finding common ground before conflicts could escalate. They invest more resources in preventing wars than we do in waging them. Meanwhile, on Earth, the infiltration team was about to witness something that would fundamentally challenge Centauri understanding of power. Naira had been invited to observe a global youth peace conference, where young leaders from countries with histories of conflict worked together to build bridges between their communities. She watched in amazement as teenagers from regions that had been at war for generations sat together, shared meals, and worked on joint projects. They called it building peace from the ground up. The concept was alien to the Centauri, who had always believed peace could only be imposed from above through strength and dominance. One young speaker particularly caught Naira's attention. She spoke about her grandmother, who had lost everything in a war, yet chose to work with women from the enemy side to create a peace initiative. Hatred is taught, the girl said, her voice clear and strong, but so is peace. We choose what lessons to pass on to the next generation. Back on the ship, the debate among the officers had intensified. First Officer Kyla presented data that shocked even the most hardened warriors. Our analysis shows that humans have developed something we never considered, the ability to win without fighting. She brought up new images, economic partnerships between former enemies, cultural exchange programs, joint scientific ventures. They've discovered that shared prosperity is a more effective deterrent to war than any weapon we've ever developed. The revelation hit hardest among the younger officers. Lieutenant Mira, barely a cycle out of warrior training, stood to address the command staff, an unprecedented breach of protocol that showed just how deeply these discoveries had affected them. High Commander, she said, her voice trembling but determined, we were taught that strength lies in our ability to conquer. But what if true strength lies in our ability to connect? These humans, they've mastered something we never even attempted. The discussion was interrupted by an urgent communication from Kira at the community center. She had just witnessed something extraordinary, a conflict resolution session between two communities on the brink of violence. Instead of armed confrontation, they had chosen to engage in what humans called restorative justice. They sat in a circle, Kira reported, her voice filled with wonder. Each side shared their pain, their fears, their hopes. They didn't seek victory over each other, they sought victory over the conflict itself. High Commander, they turned enemies into partners in problem-solving. This report sparked an intense debate about the nature of victory itself. Combat Master Zara, who had initially opposed any deviation from Centauri traditions, found herself questioning everything she had taught for decades. In all our conquests, she mused aloud, have we ever achieved what these humans manage through peace? Our victories last only until someone stronger appears. But their victories. She gestured to the images of former enemies working together, their victories seemed to grow stronger with time. As the debate continued, Lyra made another breakthrough in her research at the university. She discovered human studies on something called emotional intelligence, the ability to understand and manage emotions, both one's own and others. This concept was revolutionary to the Centauri, who had always seen emotions as weaknesses to be conquered. They don't just study war, Lyra reported. They study peace with the same intensity. They have entire institutes dedicated to understanding how to build and maintain peace. They see peace not as the absence of war, but as an active, dynamic state that requires constant work and attention. High Commander Vera absorbed all this information, knowing that her next decision would reshape not just this mission, but potentially the entire future of Zentari civilization. The evidence was clear: humans had developed something more powerful than any weapon in the Zentari arsenal, the ability to choose a different path. As the Earth's night side came into view, dotted with the lights of countless cities, Vera made her decision. She would propose something unprecedented in Zentari history, a mission of learning rather than conquest. But first, she had to convince her warriors that the greatest victory they could achieve would be over their own warlike nature. Our ancestors, she addressed her officers, taught us that peace is the reward of victory. These humans have shown us that peace itself can be the victory. The question before us now is, are we strong enough to learn this new kind of strength? The transformation of the Zentari mission took an unexpected turn when their long-range sensors detected something alarming: another alien fleet approaching Earth's solar system. These weren't peaceful explorers. Their weapons signatures matched those of the notorious Drachnid Empire, a race of conquerors even more aggressive than the Zentari. High Commander Vera stood in her private chambers, watching the tactical display with growing concern. The Drachnid fleet would reach Earth in less than a month. Humanity, unaware of either alien presence, continued their daily lives below, their peaceful achievements about to face their greatest test. "We have three options," First Officer Kyla presented to the command staff. "We can leave and let Earth face the Drachnids alone. We can reveal ourselves and help humanity prepare for war. Or..." She paused, considering the unprecedented nature of her next words, "we can try to apply what we've learned from humans about preventing conflict." Meanwhile, on Earth, the infiltration team was making discoveries that would prove crucial to their decision. Naira had begun attending what humans called peace and conflict studies lectures at the university. During one session, she learned about something that shocked her: the concept of diplomatic intervention. Throughout history, the professor explained, there have been instances where third parties prevented wars not through force, but through mediation and creative problem-solving. This idea sparked something in Naira's mind. She immediately encrypted a message to High Commander Vera: "What if we could be mediators between Earth and the Drachnids, rather than choosing sides in a war?" The suggestion was revolutionary. The Zentari had never considered playing the role of peacekeepers. Their society valued direct action, not subtle diplomacy. Yet, as they had learned from humans, sometimes the most powerful moves were the ones that prevented violence altogether. Vera called an emergency meeting of her senior staff. The holographic chamber filled with her most trusted officers as they discussed this radical proposal. Combat Master Zara, who had initially resisted any deviation from traditional Zentari warfare, now stood in support of the peaceful approach. "We've watched humans resolve conflicts through understanding and communication," Zara argued. "Perhaps it's time we put these lessons to the test on a galactic scale." The discussion was interrupted by an urgent report from Lyra at the university. She had discovered something remarkable in her research: historical examples of human civilizations that had transformed from warlike societies to peaceful ones. The parallels to their own situation were striking. "They call it cultural evolution," Lyra explained through the holographic link. "Societies can change their fundamental nature when they discover better ways of solving problems. Some of Earth's most peaceful cultures were once among its most violent." This revelation strengthened Vera's resolve. She made a decision that would either mark the beginning of a new era for the Zentari or end in catastrophic failure. They would attempt to prevent an interplanetary war using human principles of peacebuilding. The first step was understanding their potential adversaries. The Drachnids, like the Zentari, were a proud warrior race. But unlike the Zentari, they had never encountered humanity's unique approach to power and conflict. Vera dispatched scout ships to intercept the Drachnid fleet, not to engage them in battle, but to open diplomatic channels. She composed a message that would have been unthinkable in her previous life: "We invite you to observe something unprecedented, a civilization that has found strength not through conquest, but through cooperation." The Centauri surveillance teams on Earth began gathering evidence of humanity's most impressive peaceful achievements. They documented international cooperation in space exploration, joint scientific research that crossed political boundaries, and global responses to natural disasters where former enemies worked together to save lives. Meanwhile, Naira made another significant discovery through her bookstore. She had been studying human literature about first contact scenarios, stories humans wrote about meeting alien civilizations. What struck her was how many of these stories focused on peaceful communication rather than conflict. They're preparing themselves mentally for peaceful first contact, she reported to Vera. Even in their imagination, many humans seek harmony with the unknown rather than conquest. As the Drachnid fleet drew closer, Vera prepared for the most important diplomatic mission of her life. She had her engineers modify the ship's holographic systems to display Earth's history of conflict resolution and peacebuilding. The presentation would show how humans had faced the same violent impulses as other species but had developed methods to overcome them. The transformation within the Centauri ranks continued. Warriors who had once competed to achieve the highest combat scores now studied human diplomatic protocols. Battle strategists began analyzing peaceful conflict resolution techniques with the same intensity they had once applied to military tactics. Kira's experience at the community center provided valuable insights for this preparation. She had witnessed humans using something called multi-track diplomacy, engaging at various levels of society to build lasting peace. This approach would be crucial in their upcoming interaction with the Drachnids. Humans don't just engage at the leadership level, Kira explained in her report. They build connections between peoples, cultures, and communities. They create so many bonds that war becomes unthinkable. As Earth's sun set on another day, unaware of the diplomatic drama about to unfold in its orbit, High Commander Vera prepared for her greatest challenge. She would attempt to convince one of the galaxy's most warlike species to learn the same lesson the Centauri had learned from humanity, that true strength lies not in the ability to wage war, but in the wisdom to prevent it. The success or failure of this mission would not just determine Earth's fate, it would test whether the principles of peace that humans had developed could work on a galactic scale. The Centauri, once proud conquerors, were about to attempt something far more difficult than winning a war. They were going to try to win peace. The moment of truth arrived sooner than expected. The massive Drachnid fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system, their warships casting long shadows across the stars. High Commander Vera stood on her bridge, watching the tactical display as hundreds of Drachnid vessels took up offensive positions. But instead of ordering her warriors to battle stations, Vera did something unprecedented. She initiated contact using a frequency humans used for deep space research, a peaceful channel that would be monitoring this sector of space. "This is High Commander Vera of the Centauri Exploration Fleet," she transmitted. "We request peaceful dialogue regarding the civilization you approach." The response came swiftly and aggressively. "This is War Queen Drachna of the Drachnid Empire. Stand aside or be destroyed with this primitive world." Instead of retreating or attacking, Vera activated the holographic presentation her team had prepared. "Before you make your decision, witness what we have discovered about this primitive world." The transmission began with scenes from Earth's history, not just the wars, but the peace treaties that followed. It showed the formation of global organizations dedicated to preventing conflict, international courts that sought justice through law rather than force, and former enemies working together to solve global challenges. "Observe," Vera continued, "a species that could have destroyed itself many times over, but chose a different path." Meanwhile, on Earth, the infiltration team was witnessing something extraordinary. A global crisis had erupted, a massive earthquake had devastated several coastal regions. Instead of taking advantage of their neighbors' weakness, nations rushed to help each other. Former adversaries coordinated rescue efforts, shared resources, and worked together to save lives. Naira immediately transmitted this live footage to Vera, who added it to the presentation. "Watch," she told the Drachnids, as they turned crisis into cooperation. War Queen Drachna's response was unexpected. "You show us weakness and expect us to be impressed?" "No," Vera replied firmly. "I show you a strength your empire has never imagined." She transmitted new footage, scenes of human technological advancement achieved through international cooperation. While our civilizations fought for supremacy, they reached for the stars together. Their space stations carry crews from nations that once pointed nuclear weapons at each other. The Drachnid fleet held position as their leaders processed this information. Then something remarkable happened. A younger Drachnid commander requested permission to speak. "War Queen," she said, "I've analyzed their global communication networks. These humans, they tell stories about peaceful contact with alien civilizations. They imagine futures where different species work together. Even without knowing we exist, they hope for peaceful cooperation rather than conquest." This revelation sparked intense debate among the Drachnid command. Their society, like the Zentari, had never encountered a species that actively chose peace when it had the capacity for war. Meanwhile, Combat Master Zara had been studying human military history. She presented her findings to both fleets. Humans learned something crucial that both our civilizations missed. They discovered that the strongest alliances are built on mutual benefit, not fear. Their most enduring victories came not from conquering enemies, but from transforming them into allies. The discussion was interrupted by new data from Earth. Lyra had discovered something in her university research. Humans had developed simulation models showing how interplanetary cooperation could solve problems that no single civilization could handle alone. These models demonstrated how different species could work together to tackle cosmic challenges like asteroid deflection, resource scarcity, and the death of stars. War Queen Drachna studied these simulations with growing interest. "You suggest we could gain more by cooperating with these humans than by conquering them?" "I suggest," Vera replied, "that they could teach both our civilizations how to evolve beyond endless warfare. They've mastered something we never considered valuable, the ability to build power through peace." The tension in Earth's orbit reached its peak when Kira transmitted her final report from the community center. She had been working with a group of children who, in response to news about possible signals from space, had created artwork depicting peaceful first contact scenarios. Even their youngest members imagine a future of cooperation, Vera told the Drachnid fleet. They dream not of conquest, but of connection. War Queen Drachna remained silent for a long moment. When she spoke, her words would change the course of 3 civilizations. "For millennia," she began, "the Drachnid Empire has measured strength through conquest. Yet here we find a species that grows stronger by rejecting war." She paused, then made an unprecedented decision. Perhaps it is time for the Drachnid Empire to evolve as well. The next few hours saw an historic agreement. Both the Zentari and Drachnid fleets would withdraw to the edge of the solar system. They would continue to observe humanity, not as potential conquerors, but as students of peace. They would learn from humanity's example before making any official contact. High Commander Vera gave her final orders to the infiltration team. They would remain on Earth, continuing their studies of human peace-building methods. Their mission had transformed from preparation for conquest to preparation for eventual peaceful contact. As the massive fleets began their withdrawal, Naira stood in her bookstore, watching children play in the park across the street. They were from different countries, speaking different languages, yet playing together harmoniously. She sent her final report to Vera. "The humans have given us something more valuable than any conquest. They've given us a new way to define strength. They've shown us that the greatest power lies not in the ability to wage war, but in the courage to wage peace." As Earth's sun set on another day, its inhabitants remained unaware of how close they had come to interstellar war, or how their everyday choices for peace had prevented it. Their reluctance for war, once seen as weakness by alien observers, had proven to be their greatest strength, powerful enough to change the destinies of two warrior civilizations. High Commander Vera made one final entry in the mission log before leading her fleet away from Earth. We came to this planet seeking worthy opponents to conquer. Instead, we found worthy teachers who conquered our assumptions about strength and power. The humans' greatest victory was not one they knew they had won, teaching two ancient warrior cultures that peace is not the absence of strength, but its ultimate expression. The stars twinkled in Earth's night sky, now watching over not just one civilization choosing peace, but three. The human experiment in peaceful cooperation had passed its greatest test, one they would never know they faced. Their reluctance for war had not just preserved their own civilization, it had set in motion changes that would reshape the galaxy itself.